welcome everybody to the Minions of the Zoo. It's the Tuesday edition. I'm your keeper, Skep, Tock, and with me I have Minions Prospero.
Hello.
And the Harry Channel.
Good evening.
And honorary Minion. I think you're a Minion. Are you a Minion, JediGhostBear? If you're not, you should be. We can.
Hey, if you guys will dub me a Minion, then I'm a Minion.
Yeah, exactly. You do temporary honorary minionship tonight. But anyway, welcome to the show. I hope everybody's having a fantastic evening. Prospero, how was your day?
It was fine, thank you.
Did you have a good day?
Well, except for the part that my leg and shoe were soaked in cat piss, yes. Yes.
Virginia customs still escape me.
I know we're very peculiar down here in the South. I picked up 2 plastic trash bags that had been tossed in the corner of the office in which I sit, which still has ever so slightly a vague odor of cat piss to it. But not the saturating odor that hit me.
Did your day at any point elevate itself above the cat piss level?
Oh, yes. After I had wiped myself down, basically crawled into the shower and wiped all the cooties off.
Yeah.
Soaping myself to the point that my skin puckered. I stepped out as Cree came upstairs from having scrubbed the carpet and hit it with zero odor to find the Bissell Pet Vac carpet cleaner had arrived. We had ordered one, and by God, it arrived while we were mopping this mess up. And it was all pretty much done, and I said it'll wait till tomorrow because I'm not dealing with this shit right now. So it was, other than that, it was splendid. I got some laundry done. It was a beautiful day once the fog cleared, and just a great day here at the Hood. Had a lovely Labor Day picnic last night, catered by a local barbecue joint. It was splendid, and life is fine in the old folks' hood. And how was your day, Mr. Skep Tock?
It was an interesting day. I'll just tell you for fair.
Tell.
It was a start off normal day in retirement. I'm dog sitting a dog who I years and years ago found wandering the streets in part of Mansfield, Texas. I picked up this dog. Turned out to be 160 pounds of Rhodesian Ridgeback. It's a very powerful, very. If this dog moves you, he's going to move you. Mm-hmm. He's one of the strongest, probably the strongest dog I've ever known. They really are. They're described as the United Nations. The SEAL team of dogs, and they really are just amazingly athletic. This dog is huge. Anyway, I took the dog out for a walk. He moved unexpectedly, kind of pinned my leg against me, and I fell down. And you think being a young person, when you fall down, it's not a big deal. You fall down all the time. This dog pulled me down so hard, he smashed my head into the sidewalk, and I just had enough time to get a hand out and inflicted a pretty good sprain and a actual fracture in the wrist. So that was my day so far. So I get back home. They had to call 911. I was in shock. I was bleeding all over the place. I had lacerations all over the place. I'm bleeding all over the sidewalk. They call the police. They put me in the back of an ambulance and start doing a neuro workup on me and patching up my head and putting butterflies on all this stuff. And I said, no, I want you to treat me and release me. I'll go see the doctor. I promise to be good. I just start reciting volumes of knowledge at them to wow them with my cognitive capability, so they wouldn't force forced me to go to the hospital, which is what they were going to do. Fortunately, they let me go. And so I got back home, cleaned myself up. I have an appointment at the VA anyway tomorrow for something else. So I'll get this looked at there. Maybe if they'll do it. And so I thought, boy, that's a lousy day. Nothing else bad can happen today. Then I look over and there's police cars all over the place at my neighbor's house. He died. He was, in his late 80s. He had a hell of a life, was, ex-Marine, fought in Korea, just, great life, great guy. We'll miss him. We always used to see each other out working on our yards. And we'd talk every once in a while. It was just neighborly talk, just neighbors chatting over the hedge kind of a thing. And that was a sad thing. So when you ask me what kind of a day I've had, that's the kind of day that I've had. And I don't really want to get too hung up in all my stuff, but it's easy just to talk about this stuff. It doesn't make for a very interesting show. It did have to get it out there.
You cracked your noggin and the jarhead next door died. Okay, that's an interesting way to work it out.
Yeah.
Well,
Semper Fi,
God rest him.
Yeah.
He had a good run of it.
Yeah, he did.
Late 80s.
Had a good life.
Is good, and keeling over is kind of better than suffering. I guess it's hard on those left behind.
Yeah.
Because
I also think part of it was he was following his wife. She predeceased him by a couple of years.
Yeah.
So they're back together.
Yay. The ether is happy again, it's
at any rate. So that was my day. Other than that, I didn't get a darn thing done around the house. I've mostly just been sitting, sucking down ibuprofen and feeling sorry for myself. So anyway, moving right along. Harry, how was your day? I hope you had a better day than I did.
Haven't felt terribly well today. But that was the least of the issues. It's been exciting here in California. I think I told you that Livermore, California, where Lawrence Livermore Lab is, we talked about on Saturday.
I have skydived at that airport, at that regional airport there.
Well, it broke its all-time high temperature record of 105 yesterday with 106. A record that had stood since, I think it was 1950. And that record lasted 1 day.
How hot was it?
Well, I looked at the weather station for the airport. I don't know which one they consider the official one. 116.2 degrees Fahrenheit.
No.
Ooh. And
it blew. It took
Jesus Christ.
72 years for the record to stand, and it took 1 day to blow it away by 10 degrees Fahrenheit.
Wow.
That's how things are going in California. Luckily,
the winds are from the west southwest, are they?
The winds are from Satan's bungholes.
Yes, in other words, they're coming from Nevada.
Yeah, and really, there isn't really any wind. That's kind of the problem.
Part of the problem.
There's this big heat dome over that.
Other than the weather, what else is going on with you?
Other than the weather, there is really no other than the weather. That's all there was today. Seriously, that was what today was. Today was, setting up things to cool off the house, dealing with the heat, making sure people are okay. That's what today largely was focusing on
weather
epic,
emergency,
record-breaking, all-time high weather. It was
survival mode. Sounds like.
Well, I'm pretty much okay. I mean, without doxing me, I'm in one of the few parts of California that wasn't largely screwed. So I was personally okay. And I think I've said before that I have backup power. So I don't particularly care if the grid goes down. The grid can go suck it because I have my own grid and I don't care.
You're in one of those happy places where the ocean remembers that part of California exists.
Yeah. So it's been kind of an interesting day. But I think it's like the 5th or maybe the 6th day in a row where Tesla's been selling power back from people's batteries to support the grid.
I bet
It was
they have
really
been.
bad. They declared a stage 3 power emergency today, which essentially means that if you have a generator that is capable of working in an emergency, by all means, you should run that. We will pay you to run your own generator. I mean, so every co-location facility, every place that had backup power basically went on it in order to free up power on the grid. And there was several dozen zones on the grid that were going to get powered off otherwise. And I mean, the system largely worked. And you hear people say, well, the grid should be able to handle it. What, you mean you want to design a grid that's going to work in like a once in 100-year kind of event? That's the grid you think you want? No, you don't want to pay those bills. Trust me.
Their problem, you know, California's problem with this, though, is we want everyone. You okay there, David?
Yeah, I was just trying to plug my phone in.
Okay.
Yeah.
I heard it do the hum, and then I heard a feedback on me, and I was like, I better be quiet for a second.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
No, that's okay. I know what goes on with little phones that start getting hot and then okay. But I noticed that they were like, everybody drive electric cars, and then they told all of Southern California, don't plug your cars in at night. And so it's that hurry up and fail already to the Newsoms and that crowd, because those generators weren't running on unicorn farts.
Oh, God, no. The percentage of green power today was miserable.
Yeah, because when these once every 100-year things occur, you have to have these backups. When you ban them or make it so that somebody will pay too high a penalty to ever have them there, then you won't have them there, and you will have thousands of people die from heat stroke. And they would rather 1,000 people die from heat stroke from the way they keep legislating. And it's just...
Well, they want to emulate Europe in every other way. Why not that way too?
Yeah,
well,
but
it's a little, well, it's a lot more complicated than that. I mean, it's not that you're wrong. It's just that your analysis is correct as far as it goes. A lot of the reporting on what's been going on here is terrible. Okay. And, you know, as a, for instance, they talk about, oh, well, they're trying to get rid of gasoline-powered lawnmowers, and people treat that as if it's a greenhouse gas thing, and it's not. It's actually about air quality. Because if you've ever been to Southern California, and, you know, like go to Disneyland in the summer, when the inverted ceiling goes in and basically it caps the entire valley.
Yes.
It's just full of smog, like terrible, terrible, terrible smog that's like pea soup fog. It's like the kind of smog that used to kill small babies in London before they stopped burning coal all the time.
Right. Yeah.
You know, it's really terrible.
I've flown through the gunk.
Yeah.
Landing at John Wayne, where all of a sudden all the air is brown. Because I flew out to California in August and the Santa Anas had begun. And it was dreadful when my cousin and I left the OC and drove up through the mountain pass heading toward the Grand Canyon. It was literally through a curtain. I mean, you could see the air hanging in the mountain pass, and my throat stopped burning. And I was a smoker who was used to Boston inversions and East Coast inversions, which we had, that awful dome that you're talking about. And my throat was burning. As an active smoker, my throat was burning. And we got out of it, and I was like, oh, thank God. And she was like, what are you talking about? I was like, finally, we're out of it.
Yeah. Well,
she'd gotten used to it because of living where she lived.
Well, the first Europeans to arrive in Los Angeles, before it was Los Angeles, when there were just a bunch of natives scratching themselves, wandering around, doing what natives do. I'm sorry, living majestically and proudly before the white men ruined everything. They were
killing the shit out of each other.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if the natives in California actually were all that violent. They're not like the Crow and some of the other ones. But anyway, they when you hear the first accounts of it and you see the first sketches that were done when people started documenting what they saw, you could see that just from the campfires of the very, very, very small population of natives, because it's hard to live in a place like LA without life support systems and stuff. So I mean, it's a shitty place to live without modern technology.
The mountain bull was trapping the smoke.
The mountain bull was catching the smoke, and you could see this thin layer of haze just from a few thousand natives trying to like burn something.
And then the Spanish came in and burned the natives. And it got even worse. And then after that,
Well, the point I'm clumsily trying to make is California is stupid, okay? But when people take the stupid things and then misrepresent them, then somebody will just say, well, you didn't even get this correct. It's so obvious.
Well, and it robs you of your credibility. Right?
All you have to do is find one lazy, stupid statement that somebody makes, and then somebody will assume that by extension, your whole argument is invalid.
Exactly.
And so that's why I try to encourage people to know what the hell they're talking about. Yes, California is stupid, but a lot of the coverage of California stupidity is by people who don't know what the hell they're talking about.
Well, the gas-powered vehicle thing.
Yeah.
That California.
Well, that is largely a greenhouse thing, but it also is partially emissions.
Yeah, but Virginia signed similar legislation. Northam pushed it through.
Yeah, you have a trigger law, as so do like a dozen other states, to basically just match whatever California comes up with, and that's not my fault.
Yeah, it is.
No, and Inslee up here wants to do the same thing. So it's
don't let them.
Hey, nobody stuck a gun to these other states' heads and told them you have to copy us.
Wait a minute. I
think they did.
You've got some responsibility there, Harry.
Yeah, let Gavin Newsom get out of the cradle.
If somebody jumped off a bridge, would everybody do it? No.
Yes, they're lemmings.
I'm holding everybody responsible for their own behavior. Student loans, copying California, you're all on the hook. Can't blame us.
Don't let Instagram models skydive. It's just not a good idea.
Could be entertaining.
Actually, about that, if you're going to cut away from a spinning main, don't do it at 300 feet. She died at reserve line stretch. That was stupidity on her part. There's nothing but that.
Okay, I didn't know what the actual.
Yeah, I read the USPA right up on the U.S. Parachutist Association.
Okay,
right
good, because
she was an idiot.
It was she had ground training and then she solo jumped, and I was like, this jump school has been around for a long time. That was not what happened. I knew that was not what happened. Because they wouldn't just let somebody solo after doing ground training.
Well, you do the way that everybody who I've ever known in the sport, and I've known probably 50 or 100 people well in the sport, all of them will tell you that the first thing you do if you say, I want to be a skydiver and I don't want to do the tandem jump thing, I want to be a real skydiver. So you show up at the drop zone, and they give you a first jump course. At the end of your first jump course, they take you up in a plane, attach your parachute bag to the plane with what's called a static line. You jump out of the airplane, and it opens your parachute for you, and you fall to earth. You get a first jump certificate, and 99% of the people never make another parachute jump. The 1% who do have 5 more jumps, 5 more static line jumps to take if it's a USPA approved drop zone, and if they're in the business, they are
right.
Then they have to do 5 more
static line jumps.
Static line jumps. The last 2 are called DRCPs, dummy ripcord pull, which you actually have a ripcord, but it doesn't open your chute. Your chute's still being opened by the static line. Those are in your last 2. If you do a good job, you get the timing right, pulling it. Then you get to do your first free fall. It's called a hop and pop. It is a 3-second delay, not 5 seconds, 3 seconds. Arch 1,000 to 1,000, pull 1,000. That is what you count. I've done this with more than one student. And then so she should have been the absolute first jump she should have made without a static line should have been her 7th parachute jump. And in the skydiving community, you'll hear people refer to some things as parachute jumps and other things as skydives. A skydive is where you open your own parachute. Mm-hmm. A parachute jump that's not a skydive is a static line jump. Mm-hmm. So that's what should have been going on. I don't know if they took a shortcut or if, because there are places that are disreputable and will say, yeah, like you've been out of the community for 20 years and you just want to make a skydive for old time's sake. They'll rig you up, charge you for the lift and the rental, and happily take your money. But most places will make you requalify and get current again.
I think
on the DRCP, even if you've got 100 jumps.
I think this place was reputable from what I could gather. I just don't know what the hell happened.
Well, all I know is that she probably didn't even have a malfunction. She probably had a little minor a minor dimple in her square, possibly a cell that didn't inflate. It made her spin. She got worried about it. She waited too long, and then she said, "Oh shit, ground is getting close. I better go to emergency procedures." Well, the emergency procedures killed her because she basically cut away from a parachute that would have saved her life. Might have given her a hard landing. Probably would have saved her life. And instead, she was the risers on her reserve parachute were just almost fully extended when she hit the ground. So she basically jumped out of a 40-story building.
Yep. I knew something weird had happened because there were this was the first death, I think, out of anybody that ever jumped out of the school.
Oh yeah, well, almost every death is the first and usually the only one, unless it's a really busy school, and they'll have a death about every 5 or 10 years. The really top busy ones, most places little things out. If they ever have fatality, it'd be the only one.
But they made it sound like she just had like some ground training, and then they took her up in an airplane.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like that any USPA procedure I know about.
Yeah, and I was like, nah, that's. And then, of course, other people had to be like, I bet she was on her cell phone. I bet she, it's like, no, not necessarily. Shit goes wrong, okay?
It just didn't sound, yeah.
Nothing
that didn't sound right. That didn't sound right to me either.
Yeah, nothing about the story was making sense. So thank you. And I misspoke about the tandem jumps because there are tandem jumpers, like HW when he did his jump. Of course, he was going to be tandem jumping. He was 80 years old.
Yeah.
Hey, that guy made a balls ass parachute jump with a one-timer with a fast opening Navy conical reserve. That saved his life. I will respect that guy forever for
no, and I mean, then
that must have been terrifying.
Oh yeah, and I mean, two of his two crewmates. One of them,
they're dead. One of them's dead.
One hit the tail. I think they.
Yeah, I can't remember, but anyway, we're not here to rehash George Bush's thing. But you brought up the thing, and I kind of went off on that. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to ask David, how was your day, man? Hope you had a better day than mine.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I just, went to work, came home. Yesterday we went to the Mariners game. That was kind of my late Father's Day / birthday present.
Cool.
Adventure. So that was fun. Went there with all the kids and my wife and my in-laws, and that was fun. That was a lot of fun. So
end up losing. You did end up losing.
Yeah, I had a bad feeling because it was a day game after a road trip, but they got stuck in Cleveland with a 4.5-hour rain delay out there.
Oh, yeah.
So they didn't get out of there till dark 30.
Yeah, who were they playing?
They were playing Cleveland. They came here. We're got a 3-game set with the White Sox. So the game 2 is going on right now, and then then we're playing the Braves this weekend.
How are they divisionally ranked right now?
We're leading the wild card. We're about 10 games back from Houston. So, yeah, freaking Astros.
You're pretty much fucked. Okay, but that's it's look. I was a Red Sox fan for years and years. I'm still am a Red Sox fan, but I had to go through hell to get through to the other side. The first full year I lived in Massachusetts, they went to the World Series, and Bob Gibson murdered them in the 7th game of the World Series in '67, and then that was
a great series, by the way.
It was, and I don't hold it against Bob Gibson because he was an amazing pitcher, but that bastard can still eat shit and die, because that was painful for a 9-year-old child to endure. Who hopes and dreams, man, hopes and dreams, and then had to have them.
Lou Brock were that was an amazing St. Louis team.
It was, they really were, and the fact that when they finally won the World Series after that incredible drought, they had to play St. Louis to do it. Did not ease my anxiety.
No, you want to know what the odds for Seattle Mariners winning the World Series are? Plus 3,500.
Ouch.
Yeah,
sounds about right.
Yeah, Dodgers and Yankees seem to be the betting favorites.
Yeah, the Yankees.
As I look here,
Yankees are back. The Yankees are back, and it just is so galling to me. And there are 2 lovely people that live next door to me that are
actually,
Yankees
you know what?
fans.
The Dodgers and the Astros jumped ahead of the Yankees. I just refreshed this.
The Yankees are in a tailspin right now.
Yeah, it's Dodgers, Astros, Yankees right now.
Shh, don't jinx it. Let them.
Since the All-Star break, they have just been spinning their wheels.
Oh, good. They got bit by the All-Star bug.
Well, anyway, David, one of the things I wanted to make sure we touched on was some of the stuff you wanted to talk about, if you remember our Twitter conversation.
Oh, yeah.
Did you want to introduce that and just talk a little bit about where that came from?
Well, it kind of was a reaction to David Bentley Hart, who was kind of a long quote, but basically he's kind of a crotchety guy, but I like him.
Thanks.
Yeah. He kind of ticks off all the right people, which is kind of fun. But he was going off about how all Christians throughout history have kind of failed in this or that way to live up to Christianity.
Okay.
I know, imagine that, right? And that Christians well, here, actually, you know what? I'll just read. Let me go back and I'll read the quote.
Can you read the quote?
Yeah, let me go.
I'm also kind of thinking that maybe Dietrich Bonhoeffer deserves at least an asterisk.
Well, when I you ready?
Bonhoeffer. Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Ooh. Wait.
He was ready.
Never mind. I'm not ready. I'm not ready.
What?
The screen flashed back. So
anyway, this got going back and forth as a discussion about I think what elements of morality, at least that's where I joined it, are endemic to Christianity. That was the comment that I made, that most, you can find the 10 Commandments and the Golden Rule in other religions, other philosophies, other belief systems. But the thing that Christianity that is unique to Christianity is the idea that man being inherently sinful requires purification by by sacrifice, by ritual sacrifice, and in this case, it happened to be by the ritual sacrifice of a man who is purported to be God's son, Jesus, and through his sacrifice uh, comes the forgiveness of the sinfulness of man, and makes him eligible for eternal life. That's the part that comes directly from Christianity. Hang on,
But okay.
let me at least get the thought out.
All right.
Tearing to pieces.
I'm not going to.
So at least that the part that then what they do is they end up using all these great moral lessons and all these just things that are good advice to pack it in into a philosophy for living. I mean, that's really what Judaism started out to be, was these are the rules you need to live by. That's why it's an all-in-one, all-encompassing kind of a thing. Islam tries to be that, but it's a poor copy of Judaism, and doesn't work very well that way. It basically just becomes a tool of oppression. Judaism has laws and morality that and rules for eating, drinking, all the rituals of life, all the activities that they could think of to ritualize. They found a way to do it.
In a lot of ways, Christianity kind of universalized Jewish values.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're right.
Mm-hmm.
And Islam kind of took various bits and pieces that were kind of pushed to the fringe of like the Byzantine Empire, kind of condensed it, oversimplified it, and then blew it back out.
Oh yeah, Muhammad was basically. This is going to be. Oh, Susan, I'm so sorry, but Muhammad was kind of.
Here we go.
Kind of the L. Ron Hubbard of his day.
Yes, he was.
And he said, I'm going to put a religion together and make some real money, and it's going to be talking angels and flying horses and everything else. Going to really keep the public amused. And I don't think he had any. I think he was about as amoral as David Miscavige is.
Yes, I think you're right. Also, he made sure to, and his disciples made sure to flavor it up with, but Jesus is an angel, but to make it palatable on first glance to other religions and other cultures that may embrace those religions. Well, we're not saying that Jesus doesn't exist. He's one of the good guys in our way, but then you also have this shit. Pay your jizya. What I was going to address, Skep, is the other thing that is a little bit unique to Christianity, but not entirely so. Because the Greeks messed with it to some extent, I guess, as an extension of buying one's freedom from slavery, as
manumission,
did the redemption.
Oh, okay.
The notion of redemption and grace. Those are pretty potent aspects that are illuminated maybe the most clearly through Christianity as a moral. I think
I could agree to that to this extent. What Christianity tries to do is say, okay, you've noticed that when people get a little bit older, they suddenly stop working and they get really boring and quiet. That's called dying. I'd like to tell you what happens after death and make you feel better. That's a lot of what religion provides is some security about living.
But I was talking about redemption from one's sins on earth, that the push for forgiveness.
You're talking about the earthly redemption, or
yes, earthly
redemption. Oh, okay, I thought
earthly redemption, because there is a carryover in Christian culture that one can serve a prison sentence, that you can, and you are then societally released from the burden of shame attached to that crime.
Does Christianity offer the same thing? Can you be not sinful? Can you get out from under the original sin? I would maintain that
you can't.
That's inimical. Yes, that's
you
against
can't.
The Christian philosophy.
But there exists the saving grace,
Right.
and I mean, granted, that's the elusive thing on the other side of the veil.
Mm-hmm.
But it is on this side of the veil by accepting Christ as your savior, so one can begin to actively seek that redemption through grace on this side of the veil. You don't have to die to be born again. You do it metaphorically.
Well, you be born again, but that doesn't relieve you of sin. You can be born again, and that is a statement of faith. That's about taking Christ on board.
Yeah.
But that doesn't make you sin free. You only get to be sin free. Okay. When God judges you, okay, you're okie dokie. That's what that whole whole Revelations thing was.
I mean, I get that. My problem is, and you will find this out very quickly, I've studied church history.
Mm-hmm.
As far as my active life within the Christian church or any other belief system, it was all very lackadaisical. And my father referred to the Unitarians as a debating society. My church upbringing was more or less dinner table conversation, and the notions of original sin, ironically, Skep, given my parents were raised within churches that belonged to the Southern Baptist Convention, were not original sin stressors ever in their lives. I was not tainted by Eve. I was never told I was. I wasn't even told that in Vacation Bible School in a Southern Baptist church.
So in Southern Baptist
a lot of
church,
Southern Baptists can be a little bit Arminian in your Arminian in their outlook, especially back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s.
Well,
I think it's only a recent.
You probably need to explain what Arminian and outlook means to our audience.
Sure. Well, let me bring up the David Bentley Hart quote first.
Sure.
So that way it'll reset the conversation a little bit. But okay, here it goes. As I say, Christians have always betrayed Christianity, and that they have always misunderstood it. They've always, in a casual way, assumed that it meant to affirm whatever it was that they wanted to be valued. But I don't think there's ever been another culture that could so sublimely corrupt and so sublimely efface the original gospel and replace it with something else, with a counterfeit that's not just a disassemblance, but almost a polar opposite in a way that American religious culture did. I don't know what else to say about America. We're the most religious country in the developed world, supposedly, but it's definitely not Christianity that forms our religious consciousness. And it was that last sentence that I was kind of reacting to, because I think he's partly right in this quote, but I think he's wrong on that last sentence.
Well, I'll tell you how theologically messed up I am by my dinner time conversation. The Old Testament is the covenant with God, and it is the age of faith through law. So it is the age of law.
Okay.
Christ came with a new covenant, expunging our sins. In my mind, that meant the original sin of Adam and Eve.
Okay.
Now,
Yeah,
Skep,
that's a very dispensationalist
yeah, it's-
outlook. Yep.
well, but I'm kind of like, well, then what the fuck was the point? Because because I'm sorry, I'll get in a debate with God, you know, and this is what it will be. But then what the fuck was the point of the sacrifice of Christ? He was expunging the world of sin. The worst of them is the original sin, which is the unto the 7th generation my ass. By the time he was born, we were in the 700th generation, you know, or whatever the Hebrews counted it as. It made no sense to me that when you had this new covenant and an age of faith as opposed to an age of law, you were then still bound by the sins of Adam and Eve that you had fuck all to do with. None of us were presented with that choice. I mean, I know you've got to remember my dad was a lawyer, so it may be that I'm taking a very jurist position on this.
Mm-hmm.
But it is utterly illogical that Christ would expunge the sins of his believers, and that wouldn't include original sin, which is where the redemption and grace comes in. That saving grace is not the moment you take your last breath and enter into heaven. It's the moment you accept the new covenant. And it's I do think it's mixed up in a lot of these crazy old bastards' heads who pound pulpits, because unless you terrorize your congregation, you might lose business. And I hate to be that cynical about it, but not everybody enters into the ministry as an avocation. Some of them do it as a vocation. And
I've met a few.
Yeah, and it's, if I understand Paul, whom I don't care for, and Skep knows this, and his ways to witness,
he says he still likes you.
Yeah, I'm sure he does.
He's the marketing department. That's why.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, exactly.
Paul pisses me off beyond belief, but it's because there's just so much.
Yeah, I love Paul. Paul's great. I like Paul.
Yeah, well, good for you. The entire marketing department of the fucking Catholic Church is predicated on his shit. And I'm like, hey, you guys pretty much suck. I'm sorry to the Catholics listening. I don't hate you as individuals, but I think your papacy is stupid. And I think the entire structure of Rome is corrupt. And I also think, sadly, that those idiots that started off well-intentioned in the Reformation have turned around and turned right back into y'all.
They tend to do that.
Boy, that does sound pretty Southern Baptist. Gosh, I was gonna say I love you because you do remind me a bit of my mom. My mom is from South Carolina, so Blacksburg, South Carolina. So and she's raised Southern Baptist too. So I'm tracking with what you're saying, even if I don't agree. Totally buy it all, because I don't think you can really understand Christianity at all without Paul. He's just that important.
Yeah,
Romans.
Yeah, but I also can't. I mean, why did I need Paul to explain what Jesus said?
Well, let's. Let me say this. Let me come to poor old Paul's defense just a little bit here.
Oh my God.
Paul said, well,
I know.
I'm not a big fan of all the things that you're not a big fan of. But that said, Paul addressed a lot of things. And some of the advice that he gives in the New Testament is damn good advice, whether you're an individual or a church or a congregation. Yeah. And he had some very, very good and some very actually warm things that are a joy to read. His letter to the Colossians, for example. Also to the Ephesians, and it was interesting when he was critical of congregations too. You know, one of the letters to the Corinthians was rather snippy, I thought. And, you know, and you kind of get a feel for his, but Paul was first, last, and always a Pharisee. He was born into a family of Pharisees. He knew that he was going to be a Pharisee from the moment he was born.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a Pharisee's Pharisee. You know, by the time he was killing Stephen, persecuting the Christians, the ones who were deviating from the party line of what Judaism should be, you know, he was in full swing before he had his moment on the road to Damascus.
Mm-hmm.
And
when Saul of Tarsus became Saint Paul.
Yeah, what the original cosmic, what the fuck are you doing, dude?
Yeah.
Moment. That,
I believe you may have misunderstood something I said at one point.
It makes him a very interesting cat, and he's huge. And I agree completely with David here. You have to be able to take Paul into account to appreciate what's going on in the New Testament. I think he just wrote too much of it.
I understand that. Most of my gripe is reliance on Pauline doctrine that can, in the hands of man, at times sound contradictory to Christ's admonitions. That's all. I just it's a
he was the creature of his time.
Very much so. Very much so.
I don't think he ever stopped thinking of himself as a Jew ever.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
But I will take Prospero's point that we can put such a focus on Paul that we kind of, at the expense of, say, James or 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John.
Or Peter and John.
Or Peter,
yeah. Or Peter, yeah.
Peter, the rock of the church, Peter.
Well, Peter was the rock of the Jews. He was the one who said, this new Christianity stuff is great. It's perfect for us Jews. It'll be just fine for us Jews.
Well, was initially
that's all through the New Testament.
But wasn't that initially Christ's mission was to save God's people?
Yes.
From the twisted thinking of the Pharisees. You know, they had gotten kind of up their own butts, I think might be a good way to put it, as nicely as I can.
What was Jesus's mission? That's actually a great question.
It is, but he was kind of to right the ship.
Yeah.
Because they had gotten so bogged down in the details, they were missing the big picture. It was like the bursars had taken charge, Skep. You know, and they were missing the spiritual aspect, and they were busy trading goods at the temple. You know, Christ's shit fit at the temple is not about money lending. Okay, people, stop with that. I mean, how that got so bent just pisses me off, because it was used to hound Jews all throughout Europe. It wasn't about the money lending. It wasn't about somebody selling shirts. It was about turning it into a carnival, into a marketplace.
Right.
It wasn't a church carnival just once like a year. It was every damn day. God's house was being used for the amusement of man, not to honor God.
Every day was Black Friday.
Yes, that was it. It was Filene's basement. You know,
well, it was also about showing off yourself. I mean, and just go along with
strut your stuff and
strut your stuff. And I mean, we see that on social media all the time. I mean, like
no one else in this entire show got the Filene's basement, but I did, and I want to thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you from the bottom of my heart for that.
Yeah, just look it up online. I'm sure there are pictures of Filene's basement.
I'm sure there are.
And that is what Christ's temper tantrum at the temple is about.
Yeah.
It, if you had, geez, maybe if they had just had a market day a month at the temple, I don't think he would have been upset by it. He's dead.
I think it's
Dad's all right with this, but it wasn't supposed to be a marketplace.
yeah.
There were other places to have marketplaces. They were using the church for commerce. And
Well, actually,
And also status.
yes.
yeah, but what really, I truly think this was at the heart of it. I just finished a book called David and Solomon. It's an anthropology book. It's for anthropologists. You can read it, enjoy it if you're really into anthropology. Enjoy, and it had to do with understanding the time, understanding the time of David and Solomon. I think a lot of what Christ saw when he decided to take action, go all Antifa on the marketplace, was he said, that's the temple of God. God resides, a portion of God's spirit resides in a vessel that's inside that temple, and it's being defiled that way. I really do think that's why he snapped.
Yeah.
It's just an opinion. It's not based on anything. It's just strikes me as being a human, would have been a very human reaction, and Christ was human.
It's like dancing on someone's grave. It's vulgar. And
yeah.
And actually, peculiarly enough, I think Tim Rice and Andrew Lloyd Webber caught that.
I absolutely agree.
Absolutely agree. It's
one of my favorite pieces of art ever produced.
It's not bratish at all. It's and I call it a shit fit because it is. But it's a righteous shit fit.
Yeah.
The
purpose of the temple.
Are you doing? This is Jerusalem. This is
the temple.
The temple is supposed to be an example. Like it's supposed to be it's supposed to serve the people. It's supposed to
this is
not the other way around.
It's supposed to be a house of prayer, but you've made a den of thieves in Tim Rice's lyric.
Yeah, they're throwing bones in the courtyard. It's you just don't do that. It not only was it bad form, it was bad taste, and it was disrespectful to God, whom they paid an enormous amount of lip service to for their own status. And that's where the Pharisees had gotten. Look at me. I'm the most godly. No, look at me. And instead, they were putting on the Ritz. Strutting with Rockefellers.
That's such a human dynamic of you get really passionate about something, and then suddenly everybody feels the desire to one-up each other. We've seen it with RedTube. We saw it with the skeptic community. Everybody's trying to one-up themselves, and we're seeing it now with, on the whole.
We repeat this stuff over and over and over.
We're human.
And yes, and I've always thought part of the whole words in red were to avoid the pitfalls of daily life, y'all.
Mm-hmm.
I have some suggestions. Even if you don't believe that Christ is divine, as a Esthete rabbi, he has some really good ideas for how one can rub along with one's fellow man. And in society at large. And it's
and that actually kind of goes to what I was critiquing the David Bentley Hart quote is I think Christianity, and this kind of borrows from Tom Holland's book Dominion, and also oh geez, I just forgot his name. The name of the book is Destroyer of the Gods, by Larry Hurtado. That's his name. Larry Hurtado's book is all about what made Christianity distinct within a Greco-Roman context.
Mm-hmm.
You can't really talk about that without talking about what made the Jews distinct in a Greco-Roman context.
Right.
And Dominion is all about how Christianity kind of terraformed the morality of the world through its influence.
Through Western Europe, at least.
through Western Europe, beginning with, but then and eventually the rest of the world. But in particular Western Europe,
It's where it had its greatest and most lasting impact, where it didn't get morphed vaguely. Anthropologically speaking, I'm sure Skep can point out that people take elements of things that foreigners bring to them, and reshape them, because it terraformed, and that terraformed got refined in different ways. You know, you know how you see the practices, David, of Christianity being quite different in different parts of the world.
Sure.
It had different dominating cultures to them, you know, other than the Greco-Roman world, and all those points of reference, where you see perhaps more charismatic expressions of religion, or more ritualistic expressions, and it's still vaguely recognizable. I mean, it is still Christianity at its core, but it is a little different in the window dressing. Would that make sense? Because I really don't think that the Thais see Christianity quite the same way that we of a Greco-Roman heritage do.
No, in
at
fact,
all.
Did you read the blurb for this thing, Dominion, how the Christian Revolution remade the world? He says that today the West remains utterly saturated by Christian assumptions. Our morals and ethics are not universal. Instead, they are fruits of very distinctive civilizations. Concepts such as secularism, liberalism, science, and homosexuality are deeply rooted in a Christian seedbed, which that statement makes me go, huh? And then from Babylon to the Beatles, St. Michael, and to Me Too, Dominion tells the story of how Christianity transformed the world. Okay.
Yeah, that's bullshit. Because, I mean, I'm sorry. What the hell does Christianity have to do with Me Too? Not a flipping flat.
It has everything to do.
I know.
All right. Let's hear both sides. Why do you say that, David?
So,
how does it have to do with Me Too? That's a great thing to tease this out.
Well, it goes all the way back to the beginning of treating women as a creation of God, equal to men. It was one of the things that made Christianity distinct is that it demanded from top to bottom, from the lowliest slave to the highest elite, from the man, the noblest of men, which the Greco-Romans could do literally anything they want to, whoever they wanted to. It demanded that they all have the same ethical code. So from that seedbed, you bring it all the way forward into Me Too. It's that same call of that is warped and distorted. So I'm not saying it's an orthodox view of Christian view or even good, but that that initial seedbed that women do have value and cannot just be used and abused, and they were not just property.
But are you saying that is peculiar to Christianity? So I don't think you can make this statement, can you? Or is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying Me Too. Me Too is to my mind. Me Too is unthinkable without Christianity.
Okay. Why could that not happen? Let me think. I might agree with you. Let me think about this.
Well, there's a biological imperative for women not to want to have sex against their will.
Okay.
It's extremely expensive for women to reproduce. So I can easily imagine Me Too happening without Christianity, because it deals with things that are basic and pre-existed Christianity by like 100,000 years or more.
From an evolutionary perspective, yeah, but that's only with the power structure we have. I mean,
Okay,
the
you're
reason
talking
why
about from the
women,
legal perspective. Was
well,
it
I'm talking,
codified more through the legal system or the legalistic way of looking at things in out of the Greco-Roman world? In other words, out of the Christian world.
well, women have always been a more valuable resource than men. Men have always been more expendable than women.
Yeah, but
Valuable is an interesting word.
Yes.
That's the thing, because valuable implies is a heavily loaded word in terms of what it means, because it has a lot to do with context. So in the context of if 90% of us are going to die, who should we try to save? You want to save the women, because they're the ones that can have all the kids. You can rebuild a lot faster. If you're about to be attacked by a bunch of barbarians, in that particular moment, women are a lot less valuable than guys who can hold swords and actually hold their own in combat. Sorry, Netflix, you suck. Your account of history. So valuable means different things at different times.
Not
I've been
exactly,
keeping quiet
because
I don't want to nitpick. I don't want to nitpick your thesis. So
yes,
can you remind me just for a moment what your original thesis was? Because we've gotten away from it, and I want to make sure I'm following.
The thesis, in short, is that Christianity has terraformed morality to such an extent that we don't even really notice it anymore, because it's just in the air we breathe. It's in the water we swim in. It pervades from top to bottom, to such an extent.
David, would it be fair to use this statement from the blurb from Dominion, saying that the West remains utterly saturated by Christian assumptions, and that our morals and ethics are not universal? Instead, they are the fruits of very distinctive civilization. Concepts such as secularism, liberalism, science, and homosexuality are deeply rooted in the Christian seedbed.
No, I absolutely. Yep.
Is that a clear statement of your thesis?
Yep.
Okay. Harry, does that make enough sense? Or?
Yeah. Well, I mean, because we were kind of going off into a lot of different topics, with Prospero. And it was a good conversation, but I wanted to make sure I understood what the beginning part was.
So, I see what you're saying, where Me Too could come up in a, theological, it can't come up in a moral vacuum, but I think it can come up in an intellectual environment where the particulars of Christianity are not present.
Well, if we go
in other words, what I'm trying to say is that Christianity did not invent the things that led to Me Too. They might have them as part of their excellent philosophy, but did they invent them? I'm not sure they did. I think there's
I don't see it quite to the same the extending.
How are you on natural rights? I guess that's where I'm going.
I'm a strong advocate of natural rights. I think that's
and the natural rights extend from whom, what, where? Do they come from? Does the government allow you to have them?
No. Well, okay. I mean, the government.
Where do natural rights come from? This is important.
On the barest of bones.
For me, natural rights.
Well, nature and nature's God. I'm going to quote Jefferson on that one.
From God.
Yeah, but even without a belief in God, natural rights can still be in existence.
Absolutely. I'm a big natural rights guy, and I don't have the same picture of God as you do. Absolutely.
But when you get into the messiness of living, you can go off the rails in a big way, because kind of go back with Harry. He was talking about okay, we're in a war situation versus just a normal situation of reproduction. because women can only have children about once a year or so.
Mhm.
Men, it's kind of unlimited how much they can reproduce, provided they have enough. There's enough women
I
around.
think that's what Harry was saying about the
Yeah.
relative cost of reproduction.
Well,
being
also
high
the
for
woman
women.
becomes vulnerable. That's the main thing,
Yes.
because humans are so complicated and messy that the woman is extremely vulnerable. So it's very hard for the woman to just give birth and take care of the child on her own. The offspring will quite probably not survive. Well, the likelihood is pretty low. So women have a vested interest in picking their partners carefully.
Yes.
So unwanted
it's also,
sexual
you're
intercourse
a man-
is bad.
if you're a man who can overpower other men or other women, it's in your vested interest to knock out any particular competition and narrow the woman's options, shall we say?
Yeah, well, I mean,
Because a lot of wars are fought over that.
it gets messy and complicated when you bring up uncomfortable things like sperm competition and stuff like that. But I'm just saying that there's a biological imperative that predates the written human language that would explain
Yes.
Me Too.
I
I
get
think
what
that's
you're saying.
the point I'm trying to make, that it's so baked in to being human that you don't need any fancy highfalutin theories or philosophy or ethics or legal structure for this to exist. If you look around the world, it's pretty rare for humans to find a culture where rape is considered acceptable. Under normal circumstances. Obviously, if there's like war or conquest or something, that's a different situation.
I mean, you're talking about Christianity. Essentially, has its roots with Abraham, which until I read a book a couple of weeks ago, I thought was about 4,000 years BC. But now, humans have been reproducing this way, and the calculus of human reproduction has been roughly the way that it is now for at least 200,000 years. That's a lot of time to bake in those purely almost biological, almost species wide instincts that begin to govern our behavior with respect to reproduction and how that should happen and how we should sort ourselves to pair up, and not that it takes two people to make a baby anymore, because now with all the genders,
Parthenogenesis is a thing now with humans. Yes, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh,
That explains
Nice,
Drake
Prospero.
and the hot sauce.
yeah. It's
Keeps that parthenogenesis from taking place.
yeah. That put Cholula on your burrito, girls. You won't parthenogenocide or some whatever it is. Oh my God.
Yeah,
But the whole morality thing and Christianity gets really complicated, because there's the human life of Christ.
Mhm.
Then there's 300 AD, the marketing campaign where people try to figure stuff out.
Right.
Christianity fractures into a bunch of different sects. A bunch of them kill each other.
Mhm.
And it's several hundred years until, was it Erasmus comes along, who basically redefines the Christian relationship between God and man. Because there was like a sales agent. It was like trying to buy a house without a realtor. You couldn't get a direct line to God. There was a guy who had a financial interest in keeping you on the hook.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So the doctrine was all in a language that most people couldn't even understand.
It's actually Martin Luther that did it more than Erasmus.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Well, first was Erasmus, and then Martin Luther the Protestant Reformation. But there were several hundred years in there.
He didn't mean to create the Reformation, by the way.
Well, but there were several hundred years in there where you had to go through your agent to talk to God.
Yeah, you had an intercessor.
And so a lot of
Pharisee. So
it's still true in the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
So when you talk about religion and morals, it's hard for me as kind of an outsider to get a handle on exactly what you're talking about. The human life of Christ is really interesting. Like the almost the Jeffersonian view of Christ is really interesting. But it's hard for me as to sort of figure out where the human life of Christ ends and the marketing campaign from all the other people that put their stain on things. Who was the guy who was like a terrible debaucher and then reformed and then made the church really
St.
British?
Augustine.
Yeah, and then St. Augustine. I mean, there's all these different people who've changed things over the
Augustine
years.
is just
I can't even keep track of what's going on.
Yeah.
And I've tried.
Yeah, we called him Augie.
How do you navigate through these things, Jedi?
Oh boy, that's a.
How do you personally
$100,000
figure out? How do you personally figure out which parts are sort of the moral parts? I mean, how does that work for you?
Well, that's a long and complicated conversation. I've been a Christian since I was 15, so I've been 25 years of trying to. I don't know how to condense that down into one line. I think. Let me come back to that because I gotta marinate on it a little bit. But
sure.
To go back to kind of where like the whole genesis of morality and kind of the back to the main thesis. And if we just look at just the Greco-Roman context, it's impossible to imagine a Me Too movement in the Greco-Roman world. It just was not there. I mean, with the amount of
maybe with little Greek shepherd boys back in the day, but
well, but even then, I mean, those were of lower class that were abused within that context. Girls.
Well, exactly who got folded up into Me Too, my friend, because by and large, most of the reportage on Me Too involves what we would consider elite class people.
Well, yeah.
So, are you saying that the view of Uxor in the Roman world was she was not to be protected from rape?
No, the opposite.
Or sexual violation? And
depending on your class, a proper Roman woman,
right? But that's not
sure. Slave girls, no.
That's not. Yes, but it's not slave girls who make up Me Too. It's Uxors who make up Me Too. It is the higher class. It's the Gwyneth Paltrows. That poor little Argentine actress who was attacked by Harvey. Was
which get your monsters straight.
Only one of them was hung.
She was Spanish or Argentine or something like that. Yeah. We don't really even know because we don't talk about her. We talk about all the other people who had unpleasant contact with Harvey Weinstein. We don't talk about her because her fucking case was ignored and she was wearing a wire.
Right.
She wore a wire. But who do people talk about? They talk about Gwyneth Paltrow, whose father was a director and mother a well-known actress. They talk about Mira Sorvino only very quietly and among a few circles because she said no, and her career was dented. But Paul Sorvino, God rest his soul, recently deceased, did not have the power that Gwyneth's mommy and daddy had, or her boyfriend Brad. I'd have beat him up if he'd done it again.
Well, I'm not saying Me Too was an accurate or even
Me Too is a shit example. I'm sorry, my friend.
Well, no, it is. It is.
It is a terrible example of the application of Christianity in present-day morality, because there's nothing Christian about it. There's nothing moral about it.
The moral outrage that even began is a weird amalgamation of Christian virtue. It's a call to Christian virtue that was ignored for a long time and suddenly is suddenly came back.
What calls?
Does that make sense?
The calls were squelched. The only reason we know anything about it is finally it happened to enough women that it mattered. And we only found out about the woman wearing the wire after the lid had been blown off the thing. We didn't know about that. I mean, Rowan Farrow wrote a story about this that got buried.
But the only reason why it got to the point where it mattered was because it landed in a Christian seedbed that was already pre-existing.
No, it landed in a publicity seedbed.
That is also in a Christian seedbed.
Really?
I think the same thing would have happened if it happened in just about any other developed country. It would have done the same thing in Japan.
Took the words out of my mouth,
China. I think in a lot of ways this is probably the single worst.
Have we had a scandal like that in Japan or China?
Well, just
no,
because
we said
one
if it
doesn't
happened
exist,
in one of those places. That's the thing.
I mean, don't be a Sam Harris about this, David. Has it happened there, therefore it can't? Is not proof of anything. I mean, that's Sam Harris level stuff.
Well, but I'm not going to go off the thesis that the Chinese elites or the Japanese elites or any other elites are somehow less or more moral than the elites of our society.
Oh, not claiming that they're more moral, just that I don't think you need Christianity to be offended about Me Too. And I want to be careful here because there's three of us, and I don't want you to feel like you're being picked on in a 3 against.
Oh, no, not at all. No, this is
because that's totally unfair.
No, but you can also gang up on him because he's fine with it because he actually.
Yeah, that's.
David has an agile mind and a fine command of the English language.
And he also
that's why he's on this show.
He also knows that if I say to him that that's Sam Harris level, that's unworthy of you, that is actually a compliment to you because you're nothing like Sam Harris.
Well, I think Me Too's a weird one also in a lot of ways because
I don't think
I take issue with something.
Think it helps.
It's a bad example.
I think I take issue with something Prospero said, and it's more.
No, go ahead, have at me.
Which is this idea that we sort of didn't do anything about it until we found out about it. We had plenty of people like Seth MacFarlane kind of doing the wink and the nod, making jokes about it. Lots and lots and lots of people knew about it. But it was one of those things where Oprah was taking young actresses by the hand and leading them to Harvey Weinstein's table.
And
I can show you the freaking pictures and the look on their faces as Harvey Weinstein grabs their little hand, and it's so terrible.
Oh, that's
so terrible. Lots and lots of people knew, and nobody did anything about it.
There were a lot of Ghislaine Maxwell's in that scenario.
Well, it's because there was so much money involved in it that people didn't do the right thing because it was not in their best interest to do it. They basically just looked the other way and kept walking.
I'd call it a failure of Christianity.
And this exactly that's exactly the point I'm trying to make. If Christianity was going to do something good in this situation, what it should have done is it should have influenced these people in a way that made them forget their earthly self-interest and convince them to do the right thing.
Well,
that's where Christianity could have actually come to the fore. Once it was out in the open and nobody could deny it, I don't think Christianity is a good fit for this, or not necessary in any sort of way for it.
Do you know why? Because Harvey Weinstein's a new priesthood.
It was a really messed up situation.
Well, and you
to kind of go back to
what Meryl
Streep said all the way. Go ahead. Sorry.
Best kept not secret in Hollywood.
It sure as hell was, because a lot of people knew, certainly enough people that something should have happened. And shame on all of them.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, for sure. So to go back back to St. Paul for a second. I'm going to bring my guy back in here. feminists really critique Paul about it. You know, the I think it's pretty sure it's Corinthians. It may have been 2 Corinthians, where Paul makes a big deal about women covering their hair and you know, kind of proper order to worship and that sort of stuff in that kind of context.
And Ephesians also does.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So-
that was what I heard out of feminists in the 70s was Ephesians.
Right. And so, but the reason why Paul is insisting on that, on women having their hair covered, is you have to look at that cultural context. Slave girls, single women, lower class women could not have their head covered, couldn't put a headscarf on. That signaled that they were sexually available. So what Paul is saying, in other words, he says, when you enter these doors, you are going to be treated like a proper Roman woman. Oh, men who you've been, banging every slave girl prostitute that you can until you're 35 and can marry a noble woman's 15-year-old. You wait till that comes available. Now you can't no longer do that. You have to have the same moral code as a proper Roman woman. What we expect of what we consider proper Roman woman is now required for all of you from top to bottom of society. And we still have that attitude today, even if we ignore it from time to time when it's convenient for our sakes because we're bad at Christianity. That attitude still persists today. Children having worth is a Christian, not as an individual, individual image bearer of God, not just are they important to a cultural society, but they as an individual matter and can't just be tossed on the side of the road to be the best case scenario, picked up and turned into a slave. Worst case scenario, get eaten by a wolf. But that's no longer an option for you.
What is it that is required to have Christianity to construct the moral fundament of the principle you just outlined?
What is required?
Yeah, I mean, to respect a woman, to respect other people, to
respect children,
do the golden rule, the 10 commandments. I don't see what this was the reason for my original comment and why I got so interested in the discussion. I didn't see what was particular or peculiar to Christianity that would require Christianity for these values to be constructed, basically, that women were worth something, that I like the biological underpinning of Harry's explanation about the relative expense of women in the mating process and the reproduction process, but and I see that as being able to exist and having the same, just as much moral validity as it has within the Christian framework. It could exist without it.
Yeah, but we're also
change my mind.
We're also looking at it having breathed this air for the last 2,000 years. We're not looking at it. It's tough to put us to even kind of go back to a tribal context or even like that. So we're kind of already downstream of that a long way.
And you're saying it's the influence of Christianity. So, but is it a chicken and egg kind of a problem? I mean, is it that Christianity has just been here, that those principles didn't exist before Christianity? You might be able to argue that. I don't think you can, but you could try.
Abraham and Isaac makes you question that, because even the way it's told in the Bible, Abraham is a little bit horrified by God's.
Oh yeah. There's this whole book in the Bible called Deuteronomy.
Suggestion that he off his kid. He's going to do it because he's a dutiful servant of God, but he is certainly not unhappy when he doesn't have to. He is rather joyful.
Also, there was no Christianity then.
Yeah, that was my point, that the value of children was understood within Jewish culture.
Which Christianity universalized. So that was distinctive to Jewish culture. It was not distinctive or instinctive in other cultures. There's a lot of child sacrifice.
Yes, there has been.
Globally.
And there was also the suggestion of child sacrifice in Jewish culture, with which Christianity universalized. And Christians certainly haven't had trouble sacrificing other cultures' children.
Well, Christians are also bad at Christianity. So,
well, that's a convenient explanation. But is it that they really
Is
care?
it cause or is it effect?
Effect, yeah.
Yeah, that's really what it is. I don't.
It's
know.
in a learning curve of man. The more he dominates his environment.
Yeah, that there is,
because man's
no
had
doubt
difficult stretches there, but
there. I do think that Christianity has been extremely important in the preservation and transmission of knowledge and philosophy, of language, of history. There's so many good things. Yeah, law. My God, it has been the font from which a lot of good things, many good things, have sprung. It's been the vessel of human achievement for a long time. And
it's been a hell of a delivery mechanism.
Well, it is. I'm just not sure it's a. Yeah, that's actually a good analogy. It's more like a delivery mechanism than it is a generating mechanism. It was there when this stuff happened. We tend to want to ascribe the
ex post facto
causality, the causality to it, but that may not be appropriate. Certainly the things that we think are the good things that come from Christianity, all those things exist in other cultures.
I think
in non-Christian environments and cultures.
If I had to ascribe something to Christianity, Judeo-Christian culture, something that I think may be vaguely more unique to it, and this goes to politics, from the standpoint of our moral view of the individual's relationship to the state. The value of the individual, of free will, of so many of the Western philosophical ideas, both of the philosophes and the British political philosophers, have a lot of foundational bits of Christianity in them. Free will, which translates to personal responsibility. The value of the individual to individual voting rights. It took us a long time to get there. I do think our Declaration of Independence has certain aspects regarding Western philosophy that go back to the humanists, but also the Christians, of truths that are self-evident. I think in that regard, Christianity has had enormous secondhand, and I have to call it secondhand, even though it may be quite foundational. Franklin and Paine argued about this a lot when it came to moral philosophy, or at least view of the individual and the state. There are a lot of parallels to Christ and the Pharisees between the founders and the King of England. Just saying. You know, there's a fair number of them. I don't know, Skep, you might think I'm full of shit painting that kind of metaphor, but there is a speaking truth to power aspect, but Western civilization is guided by what I would consider three primary philosophies. Judaic law, Christian forgiveness, grace, notions like that come into play to temper that, and Greco-Roman law and philosophy regarding individuals and individuals' relationships to the state, to one another, to life and life in general. We laid down very clear principles about freedom, and it can conceivably be that it may only have been a Judeo-Christian Roman world that could have, I'm just going to say Roman, because the Romans took so much from the Greeks that it's almost ridiculous to say Greco-Roman, because in many ways Rome is Greece 2.0. I mean, there's some, yeah.
I mean, the underpinnings are sort of there, but the Romans did add quite a bit to it.
Yeah. Well, I didn't say.
And they had some of their own ideas that worked out.
That's why
really
I was
well.
kicking the Greeks back a notch.
Well, also the Greeks relocated. There were a whole bunch of them in Rome. As you said, it's all very incestuous.
Well, that's why I was saying Roman as opposed to Greco-Roman.
I helped some of those guys move.
Yeah, I know. It was
pain in the ass. It was hot then too.
Well, and God, those stones. Jesus.
When you're done, I do have something I want to say.
They kept insisting on moving bits of the Parthenon. And it was.
Go ahead, Harry.
Well, I don't think Prospero's done.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you meant when I was done. Sorry. I was being
No,
quiet
not you.
for you. I was being quiet for you. I'm sorry.
I deserve that.
Well, I think I should probably just go. So in terms of the Declaration of Independence, it's sort of like people talk about the Declaration of Independence, and they talk about what was it, Hammurabi's Code, right? But most people don't actually take time to read past the Cliff Notes. It's really interesting to look at the Declaration of Independence and Hammurabi's Code, and you realize how much of it is mundane to the point of being petty. So what you have, I'm going to give you a counter thesis. I'm not saying I necessarily believe this, but I'm giving you a counter thesis anyway. You have this long list of grievances against the King of England. And in the case of Hammurabi's Code, you have this long list of things that happen. In the event that you blind somebody's goat with your slingshot, then you get 2 gerbils and a chicken, and it's that level of mundane stuff, right? And when you look at the Declaration of Independence, there's just this whole grievance list. It's like they said, okay, we're going to brainstorm. Think of every single thing that King George has done that's pissed you off. Let's write them all down. So there's this huge list of shit that they didn't like. It's like, I remember that time those assholes came and they put troops in my house, and those assholes ate all of my stuff. I had leftovers. I had leftovers in the icebox, and they had my name on them. and I came back and the plate was empty, and they didn't even wash it. So
And
it's
they
that
put-
kind of
yeah.
stuff.
They put
It's
too
just-
much cinnamon in the applesauce.
It's this whole
Right.
list of mundane shit. And then there's the part at the beginning with the stuff that you're talking about. The,
when
the
in the course of human
sophisticated,
events it becomes
yeah, it's all
necessary.
sophisticated stuff. I'm going to say that what happened was they had their brainstorming session and they said, we didn't like any of this. Let's come up with a list of reasons that explain why all of this was wrong. They worked their way backwards from the list, from the bitch festival.
Yes.
And
they
came
did.
up, and because these are smart, well-educated people, he said, I'm sure I can find several principles that will make my point of why all this other stuff was bullshit.
Well, I could also counter your counter with Parliament.
I know. My point is, I think that most
The
people's
letter was
principles...
addressed to Parliament,
I know.
and
most
Parliament
people's,
took everything topic by topic.
most
and that's
people's
why it's
principles
so boring.
are just things that they use to justify the things that they like and don't like. Humans are very, very good at coming up with
We are
reasons why
incredibly-
why
yeah.
we're right about the things that we like and the things we don't like.
So you're talking about post-priori reasoning.
Absolutely, and I
Yeah.
think it's a natural thing. I think that very
priori.
smart,
Sorry.
very smart men sat down and came up with a very nice several paragraphs in the Declaration of Independence.
Mhm.
But if you read it all, you become somewhat disillusioned. You go, this isn't this
I
lofty
don't.
document.
I don't, because I studied British history and I know how goddamn tedious
Yeah,
Parliament.
I think, oh, this is going to be this great document. I start reading and go, what the hell are they going on about?
Yeah, but
You
I
know.
mean, how much?
I'm going to get some ancient wisdom
There
by
was a
reading
lot-
the Code of Hammurabi. Nope.
Okay,
Nope.
I'm gonna,
No, you're not.
I'm gonna fuss you out for a minute. There was a lot of a priori reasoning done before they wrote that document. They sweated balls over that shit. There was a couple of big fucking fights about that stuff, about whether they were going to even squeak louder
Mhm.
to piss off the British, because they were reliant on the British for their survival, and it was not as petty as you're making it sound. It's a good thing
Well,
this is not the
also-
4th of July, or I'd rip you
It
a
takes
new
them-
one.
It takes 3 months to send a note back to England. So you
Yeah.
better get everything you want to say out, otherwise,
Write that shit
oh,
down.
by the way, note that comes later is not going to get read.
Well,
Write
when
that shit down.
yeah, you're not kidding. It was
He made fun of my cow.
yeah. No
Well,
kidding.
put it on the list.
Well, it basically was a love letter to the Whigs, who were
True.
already pissed off with the king, and they had a very small group of Whigs that might agree with them, and they kind of had to lay the shit out that no Englishman would have been putting up with, because a lot of the stuff that was happening in the colonies would not have floated within the country of England. It just wouldn't. Nobody would have put up with that. Even a Tory or two would have gone, but I know what you mean, Harry. You have to be a real lover of history to read the Declaration of Independence and find every jot and tittle to be that interesting. Because it is a whole lot about, I don't like the way he cut his toenails. It sounds petty. It was a big deal. Really was. I promise
And
you.
if I might, I'd like to go back to what Harry asked me earlier about, like, how do I pick between all these options and all that stuff? In a lot of ways, I kind of punted a little bit because I've been a Christian for 25 years and I'm still working that out. At least for me, I'm an evangelical, so the Bible, even the stuff Paul wrote, is really, really important.
Mm-hmm.
And so I try to keep that, high on the list. And, I use, the church fathers and stuff as I try to read those guys. But I try to simplify it. I mean, I have to for my kids. You know, because I'm not going to sit here and be like, well, here's what Augustine said, and here's what Gregory of Nyssa said, and here's what, you know, they're going to roll, their eyes are rolled in the back of their head. So yeah, I try to, and I also try to stay humble, because just because I'm a Protestant, that goes to a, you know, a church that's a Congregationalist church, a la, you know, similar to a lot of Southern Baptist churches.
Oh, I'm sorry. When did the Congregationalists become evangelicals? I have to ask.
Well, I'm not a Congregationalist, but the church is run in a Congregationalist way. Like there's no church governance above. It's a independent Christian church, so it's a like Stone Campbell movement, Church of Christ.
He's talking about the church organization, not the theology.
Not the Congregationalist. Yeah, no, you are correct with the Congregationalist there.
Having attended a Congregational church as a teenager, I can't even tell you what their theology is. It was kind of a little bit of Presbyterian and a whole lot less Presbytery.
Right.
If you get my drift.
Yep, I do.
We're like leftover Puritans who got over themselves. I don't know. It was like totally freeform. What the fuck? Minister got up, preached against the Vietnam War. My dad got mad and we left.
Gotcha.
Problem solved.
The short answer to the question is I try to read a lot, stay humble, and try to keep it simple as much as I can.
That's a hell of a thing to simplify.
It's not the answer I was expecting, because I was sitting here, because if I was in your position, if I was you, my answer would probably be something more along the lines of, you know, the Gospels don't even agree with each other. Lots of people have written lots of things. It's hard to tell where the hand of man and the hand of God ends. So you have to take each thing individually and see how it resonates with you. And then you maybe assume that your personal relationship with God gives you some kind of insight into which parts you internalize and which parts you reject. There has to be some kind of system, because I don't envy you trying to navigate your way through all this stuff, because as you said, it's been 25 years and it ain't easy.
No, it's not. The thing about it is most of the heavy lifting, really, a lot of ways, most Christians agree with the basic concepts all the way down. It's we're arguing on the margins on a lot of these things, and arguing very loudly on the margins on all this stuff.
Give me an example of one of those arguments at the margins.
Oh shoot! Even real basic. How often do you give communion? Free Methodists do it once a quarter. Some churches do it once a month. My church does it once a week. You know.
Yeah, but as an outsider, I don't know why God would care. That's the thing where your brain and my brain do not work the same way. To my mind, I can't imagine that the prime mover would care how often you have communion. And understand, I'm saying this to take what I'm saying at face value. I'm saying I don't understand. I'm sure it makes sense to you, but it doesn't make any sense to me because I don't live in your world.
Well, I guess it matters from a communal standpoint. Maybe
that's not a call for you to justify why you feel the way that you feel. I know Harry did not mean that.
No. I'm asking how he decides for himself how does he figure out what works for him? The question is how do you make your choices of which things work for you and which things don't? And you said that oftentimes you read books and things by people who you respect, and you use those to sort of inform your decisions. But I mean, ultimately, you're still the one who decides which parts work for you and which ones don't.
Well, a lot of it's going to be not just me decide; it's going to be communally decided. Like on the communion thing, you know, all Christian sects believe communion is important.
So you turned your parent, but it's what Harry was asking is how you choose personally what you believe, but you don't separate yourself from your parish in that regard.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's the part I've learned something, because I realize that I'm looking at your life through my weird set of hyper individualistic.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, I am
did the same
far too hyper everything to understand. I would be the guy talking about God in the desert by himself. I would never. I couldn't live the way you do, and you probably couldn't live the way I do, and that's fine. You know, this is not a judgment thing. This is really interesting for me.
Communion of spirit versus spirit of the individual.
Well, yeah, I'm remembering what, when I was a kid, what some of that stuff actually felt like. And I think if I look back far enough at young Harry, I start to remember, yeah, I think I understand now. Thank you.
And so there you have it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the first church I went to was a Free Methodist church, and they did it once a quarter, and I didn't think anything of it. But then I went to Bible college, and that was a Church of Christ Bible college. And so then I
where did you go? Where did you go to Bible college? If you don't mind.
So it doesn't exist anymore. It was small and closed down, but it was Puget Sound Christian College.
Okay.
And it was a Church of Christ?
Yeah.
Okay.
What a pretty place to go to school.
Yeah.
But it's basically modeled after Moody, right?
It's a Stone Campbell movement church. Church.
Okay.
Yeah. So Alexander Campbell and Bart W. Stone, that crew.
Interesting. Yes. Well, Bible is our middle name. And so it goes. Well, we've kind of hit one a little longer than I'd planned on going tonight. But
yeah, we went a lot longer. Bless you.
Fascinating discussion with three interesting minds and me. And I just thoroughly enjoyed the back and forth tonight.
Kiss my ass. I was the dope in the room.
I'm the one who doesn't know anything about this
all
stuff.
right. Yeah, it's diving down for the maximum humility.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Anyway, but I do want to thank chat for coming out and listening to us. And we do this for you. And we also do it because it's a good time. Thank my panel. Thank JediGhostBear, David, and Prospero, and Harry for joining me this evening. It's just been a thorough pleasure to hear this and spend the evening with you. Here from my reclining chair of pain. But that do it for us here on the old zoo tonight. Yeah,
yours in cat piss for my end of the
theology minion style. Well, anyway, the zoo is closed. Good night, everybody.
Stay